Hello and welcome to the latest installment of PSG Talking. I'm your host Ed, and on today's show we're talking all about Xavi Simons. Before we get started, let me remind you to subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts. Check out PSG Talk Extra Time over on Substack for premium PSG content. And as always, head over to psgtalk.com for all your Paris Saint-Germain news. All right, joining me today, we have Justin from the fantastic RBL Talk Podcast. Love that name. Welcome in. I have to first say, Justin, that while I am not a Leipzig supporter, obviously, I do like to see you guys do well in the Bundesliga. You're sort of the outcast club over there, and we all know how much PSG is hated, so I think we have that in common. And then we've also, some players over the years have played for both sides. You have Christopher Nkunku, Nordi Mukiele, Jean-Kevin Augustin, so few players like that. So I just wanted to get that out there, but thanks again for coming on the show. How are things on your end?
Thank you for having me, Ed. Yeah, pretty good, actually. Just been working on the end-of-season review, as I've just organised a guest to come on the show for that. Otherwise, I would have published that just recently on around about Wednesday or Thursday this week. And just taking a little bit of downtime and figuring out what to do with the podcast during the off-season to keep people engaged. And yeah, that's pretty much it at the moment.
Absolutely. You guys had a good season. Finished fourth in the Bundesliga, made it to the knockout stage of the Champions League. So solid season from you guys. And one of the big reasons for that was Xavi Simons. I saw that you ran a poll on your Twitter feed, and you asked who was the player of the season, and I think Xavi Simons was the top vote, with Openda a distant second. So that just kind of talks about how your followers and other Leipzig supporters see him. So let's just get into him. We're going to get into like the juicy transfer rumor and speculation stuff, but I wanted to have you on the show because you've watched him all season. Can you give us an idea of how Xavi Simons played at Leipzig this season? How would you describe his overall performance this season? We know that he scored 10 goals and recorded 15 assists in all competitions, but sort of go beyond the stats and give us your take on the player.
Yeah, so Xavi Simons, as you know, young talent from PSG. He's an attacking midfielder. He's also creative. He can play as a number 10. He can play on either side because he's such a fantastic player with both feet, including his weaker foot. He's able to beat a player with his technical dribbling ability. He's also able to do flare passes. Sometimes he reads the game really well, so a lot of players sometimes struggle to see what he's doing before he does it, so to speak. Some people will be like, oh, why did Xavi do this pass or something? Like, no one was set up for it. But in his mind, that's the pass to make. And it's just the other players having to read him, expect the unknown sometimes as well. So he sort of reminds me of one of those players where he's so young, he's gone through the La Masia Academy, he's got oodles of talent, and the world's his oyster at the moment. He could be one of the best creative midfielders and almost wingers, depending on where he's deployed, of his generation.
You mentioned a few places, where he's played this season, but is there a position in particular where he is really, you saw that he really just unlocks his potential and he really thrives in a certain position? Because as a PSG supporter, we all want Xavi Simons to come back, but then we look at our squad and we're like, okay, we've got Bradley Barcola on the wing. We've got Vitinha in the midfield. So we're sort of like, we want him back, but then also what is his best position? So this season, where is his best position?
So he predominantly played as a central attacking midfielder behind the two-strike partnership. So we normally play a 4-4-2, which is a little bit modified as a 4-2-2-2. And he plays as a central attacking midfielder, normally with Dani Olmo. He plays on one side and he has that creative freedom to be able to slide in behind a number 10 or drift out a little bit wide and pick up some passes and also help in that case. So for me, he's best as a creative attacking midfielder. He's going to be able to score your goals. He's going to be able to set things up. And if you give him that ability to be free form and put himself into the positions, he will devastate defense.
Were you surprised because he was at PSV Eindhoven and then PSG had a buyback clause? Were you surprised that he was immediately loaned out and then you, Leipzig, were able to basically get him on loan almost immediately?
No, not really. So the way I looked at it was just more of like a financial thing like that. So the I think, from my perspective, it was PSG just trying to, free up a little bit of the books or something like that, and they didn't have a spot for him regularly. And you want to develop your young talent, especially you don't want them just sitting and wasting away on the bench. So I wasn't surprised that PSG actually did that. That's actually good business to have a buyback clause within 1 year. Because if, for instance, if they've misjudged their talent or anything like that, they're actually able to go up. No, you can stay there, but yeah, they're obviously the scouts were right, and they wanted him back as soon as possible, and they still wanted him to have proper match time. So yeah, Leipzig was a good fit because he played basically every game he played. He started for us, and he only missed a couple of games all season, and one was only due to suspension.
Yeah, we mentioned the relationship between PSG and Leipzig. They seem to be able to do deals pretty quickly, and so there's good relationship there, good communication. All right, let's get into all the gossip and what's going on. This is kind of a little bit long, but I want to set it all up because there's different things that are going on that we need to take into account. So, as I said, there's been some mixed reporting, but the leading narrative with Xavi Simons is that he doesn't want to return to PSG following his loan at Leipzig. A transfer is, I think, completely out of the question because, as I understand it, PSV Eindhoven would receive a substantial percentage of whatever transfer fee PSG would receive for him, I think, before next summer. So it really comes down to another loan or he has to play at PSG next season. Now, we don't know what level of control Simons has regarding his future. It sort of ranges from complete control to he gets to choose the club that he goes out on loan to, but PSG has to agree to a loan. So there's a lot of gray area that we're not really sure what is in the contract, but we do know that he recently changed his social media profile, like the picture, to trust the process, whatever that means. So with all of that being said, Justin, what is your read on this situation?
Look, it's a little bit of a tough one, isn't it? So if he was to be reloaned out, I'm going to make an assumption here. I don't like making many assumptions, but he's going to probably want to go either back to RB Leipzig because he, trusts the process. He knows how the system works, and he's got to build rapport from the players that he played around this season. But he also wants to go back to Barcelona, as per reports that have been floating around, and I'm sure he would love to have a loan spell over there. Me personally, if he's not going to be brought from Leipzig, I can tell you that now, because the transfer fee that PSG would be requiring would be too much for us. We are wanting around, I think it's about 80 million euro in player sales or in profit or something like that before.
That's what I've heard too, yeah.
Yeah, before the start of the season. So for me, I would actually say that would all go to Xavi Simons plus extra, depending on if there's any add-ons or anything like that. So that's not how RB Leipzig does business. So that's not what's going to happen. I personally can't see him forcing a move this season. Probably possibly loaned, and wouldn't be a big surprise if he does get loaned. If it will be back to RB Leipzig, however, it won't be for a buy clause or anything like that. Me personally, I'm not against the move, but I'm also not big for it. And let me explain with that. That is because he's been such a pivotal part of our team and our build-up, and he really gives us that extra dimension, which is absolutely fantastic. But I absolutely hate the fact in having to rely on a lone player to be so much of your team and your attack as well. So for me, it's more about the club trying to figure out, okay, it's hard to find a talent of Xavi Simons or something close, but can we get a player that can do similar? So, draw in the extra attacker, be able to create play and things like that.
We had a question come in from @flip 199624, and the question was, why doesn't Xavi Simons want to play for PSG all of a sudden? You mentioned Barcelona. PSG beat them in the Champions League. I also don't know, we know about their financial situation. Xavi Simons, he left Barcelona for a reason. When he was in the academy, he came to PSG. So I could see him wanting to return there, but just for his development and what's ahead of him, PSG now have a proper sporting project. We just lost Kylian Mbappe. Neymar's gone. Messi, the big stars are gone. It seems like Xavi Simons, now was the time for him to come. He would be the face of PSG. We absolutely need him. We have Champions League football. Just in your opinion, why do you think all of a sudden he wouldn't want to come and be the face of a club that's has so much promise ahead of it right now with so many young players in the squad? Why wouldn't he want to come back, do you think?
Look, that's a very tough question. I can't see anything specifically on the reason why. I don't know if it's had to do with previous transfers or anything like that, or image of the club. Because from the outside looking in, from another supporter's perspective, from a different club, there's no reason why that. I mean, if I'm Xavi Simons, I'm wanting to go there and have the team built around me. Being the star man, so to speak. And even if I'm only there for 3-4 years, then I'm 24 years old. I can go back to Barca or go wherever I want. And I would like to make history at PSG and get the first Champions League or something like that. And yeah, it's really hard to look at it from a outsider's perspective. Like the only thing I can think of is maybe internal stuff, with management or how the club's run or anything like that. But you would know more than me, and yeah, we only can speculate.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the outsider perspective. Like, maybe a few years ago when we were kind of a train wreck and we were all about the superstars, I could see a young player with a lot of promise not wanting to come here. But you look at the young players, I mean, it's completely reversed. And we know he loves Barcelona. We've got Luis Enrique as the manager. He's working on a new long-term contract, so we're not recycling managers anymore. We finally have a real manager that's going to stick there and be there for a few years and build something. So it's a real head scratcher for a lot of PSG supporters. I just didn't know if, like, throughout the season, do you recall any questions from the media over there in Germany where anyone asked him about his future? Did he ever give a hint of what he maybe was thinking? Anything come to mind?
No, through most of the reports throughout the season, he was pretty focused on like RB Leipzig, and he obviously made it known that he wanted to go back to Barcelona. And it was only at the back end of the season where he made it known publicly that he didn't really want to go back to PSG. And it's got me stumped. The reason why, because personally, like, you guys are going places, like I would be trusting the actual project of PSG with this younger squad coming through. And yeah, there's nothing that's been reported that I can recall from anything from Kicker, Build, or Bull Eye News or anything like that.
I always thought some of this, if you always have a question, you always start with money. And I do wonder, is this all coming out because maybe he wants a new contract from PSG? His current deal expires in 2027. So is he angling? He's like, look, I've proved it in the Eredivisie. I proved it in the Bundesliga. I want to get paid. I don't want to be just a guy at PSG. I want to be paid like a star. I wonder if that's maybe what's behind all this. He's threatening maybe to go out on another loan so that he can maybe get a bigger wage from PSG. If you had to guess, like, within his contract, do you think that he really truly does have complete autonomy on where he goes and what the terms and all of that? I find it hard to believe that PSG would agree to that, but maybe they didn't have a choice. Maybe they did agree to that. But what level of control do you think Simons has over his contract and his future?
It is possible what you were saying about it's more about money or something like that. At the end of the day, like, money rules everything, and they're professional athletes, and they're doing it for a living.
And Mbappe is off the books now, so he knows PSG have it now.
Yeah, that's right. So looking at it at that perspective, then yeah, sure, you could, if we go with that. But for me personally, it's not the way that I would go about it. There's ways of going about things, including on getting a better contract and whatnot. We also got to think about that it could be the player managers. So all players these days have like a player manager, as you're probably aware, and they deal with speaking to the clubs and everything like that, and doing what's best for their client. In this case, Xavi Simons. But if he wants to go to Barcelona for money, as you mentioned before, they're in financial trouble, and that's no secret. So PSG would be the ideal place to be. Is a club that's, to my knowledge, free of debt. They've got decent amount of money to be able to pay their players, and being so young, I would be wanting to make history with PSG, do right by my original club that trusted in me, and then go forward, because you don't have to play your whole entire career at PSG. You could just play 3 to 5 seasons and then go elsewhere once you've achieved what you he set out to achieve.
Yeah, he's 21 years old. He's under contract at PSG until 2027. He could run that down just like Mbappe and then go to a Barcelona, or Real Madrid, or Manchester United, or wherever he wanted to, and he would be right in his prime. Yeah,
That's right.
I just have no idea why he wouldn't. I hope it's just money, because that's an easy solution for PSG.
And
I mentioned Mbappe's leaving. We've got our wage bill pretty reasonable now, so we can pay him whatever he wants. We just want him to come back. And with Mbappe leaving, we were all looking forward to Xavi Simons, and this news broke, and it's like we just got rid of the drama with Mbappe, and then we have this. So it's really frustrating. I do want you to kind of put on your fortune teller hat here, and how do you see this all playing out? What do you think happens? Because we should hopefully have an answer before the Euros, but what do you think ultimately happens?
well, I don't think he has as much leeway as he does, or as media has been saying. I mean, every single player predicts their own future, and at the end of the day, if they want to be, they can push a move out to a degree, but you're still going to be contracted from a team regardless. So you may get a loan move. Predicting what's going to happen at the next season, I mean, it's a few months away from now. Anything can possibly happen. That being said, I think that for the first part of it, I think he's still going to be at PSG and probably play there. I don't know how many games. I don't see a move happening straight away. From my perspective, it would be, look, we'll work something out with, hopefully for him, RB Leipzig or Barcelona or wherever. And then, but we want you to play a few games with us. And if it doesn't work out, then we'll send you out on loan. And then hopefully they can sway him to stay for the rest of the season. But that's what I think will possibly happen. I mean, I could be completely wrong.
We've seen players do U-turns with PSG. We know Neymar, after a season, wanted to leave, and then he stayed and actually signed a new contract. We somehow convinced Mbappe to stay when his contract was running out. I think Marco Verratti was rumored to go to Barcelona and wanted to go, and he ended up staying. So a U-turn is not completely out of the question. If Xavi Simons doesn't have just complete control over where he goes, I just can't imagine, as much as PSG just despise Barcelona, I can't imagine they would say, okay, go out and help them, and maybe beat us in the Champions League. How about that? I can't imagine they would do that. I could see maybe a loan back to Leipzig. I think that's probably most probable. Again, trust the process. He's been there. He was successful. Maybe he wants another season. Or maybe the Premier League. I can see a club like, say, Arsenal. I think he would be a good fit there. Maybe he wants to go there. I could see a loan there. And then after the Euros, after another season at an Arsenal or Leipzig, a club like that, his value might be over 100 million euro at that point. And that would be phenomenal business for PSG, and they could reinvest in the squad. So if I had to guess, I think that is likely. But of course, I want him to come back. But if the reports are true and he doesn't want to be at PSG, this is a new phase. We don't want players at the club who don't want to be here. We wish you well, go on another loan, and then a transfer eventually, and it'll be a business transaction. So I think that's how it's going to play out. But it's interesting to get your perspective there. There's another player at Leipzig that I'm a big fan of. He's been recently linked with a move to PSG, and that's Benjamin Sesko. He's coming off a season. He scored 18 goals in all competitions for you guys. I think I read that he has a 65 million euro buyout. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I guess the first question is, do you think that he could be on the move this summer? And then do you think that there's something that maybe could be worked out? I tweeted this out. Could there something be worked out between the two clubs where maybe Xavi Simons stays at Leipzig and Sesko comes to PSG? So take those two questions and run with it.
Yeah, so no, you're correct on that. It's 65 million euro. There's been reports and links to other top clubs in the European football, being Arsenal, Chelsea, AC Milan. The newest report that I read from the Mirror, which was for 45 million pound or 55 million euro, which we wouldn't be selling him for anything under his release clause. We can only speculate on, because of what they are. They're just rumors at the moment. He's only just had his 20th or 21st birthday. The club even posted something on that. So if he's going to be an outgoing player, that's probably something that I wouldn't want to be posting on social media. So I think he's going to be staying. there is a possibility that he can go. I mean, at the end of the day, football's business. Players choose where they ultimately want to go in their endeavours, and he was originally playing just second fiddle to Yusuf Poulsen in the in the Bundesliga and also all competitions. And it wasn't until the back end of the season where he was put on as a regular starter because he was coming off the bench as an impact sub. I remember first seeing his one of his first games. He came in on with, say, no more than 15 minutes or so. I can't remember the exact amount of minutes, and he scored 2 goals, basically coming off the bench in that time frame, and won the game for Leipzig. If I remember correctly, I think it was like against Union Berlin 3-1 or something like that. And I mean, anything's possible. He could go. I don't want to see him go. He's such a good young talent. He's one of those players where not a lot of people know about Sesko. He's able to dribble the ball. He's very strong. He's fast. He's got a massive leap on him. He's good in the air, and I can easily see him scoring easily 25 goals at any top club around Europe as he gets older and gets better with age.
I'm just drooling over the potential because I know you probably don't watch a lot of PSG. We are woeful when it comes to set pieces, and you just said he's strong, he's great in the air, and I could just imagine having him, up top with Barcola whipping in crosses or Dembele, and just having
he's an ideal target man. Just like say, I hate comparing players with other players, but someone like Zlatan Ibrahimovic or something like that. So he's tall, he's powerful, and he can header the ball very well. He's also good from distance, and yeah. Like you could leave him as a centre, like just a striker by himself, and he'll still be able to score your goals.
And then you throw out Zlatan, which is one of my favorite players at PSG and just of all time, just wherever he goes. I love Zlatan, so I love that comparison. And yeah, I mean, and so it just kind of the second part of that question was like, do you think that there could be something between Sesko and Xavi Simons? I know you said you don't want to build around a player who's just on loan, but what if PSG did include some sort of buy clause for Leipzig or something like that? I mean, do you think there's anything with those two players and these two clubs that could be worked out? How likely do you think that is?
So do you mean like a swap deal, or do you mean as in...
Yeah, a swap deal, or like, hey, okay, we'll loan Simons back to you and here's a buy clause, maybe keep it at 80 million and you see what happens in the Euros in another season, then maybe Leipzig could make, a larger transfer off of him next season, and then in exchange, Sesko comes the other way to PSG. Do you think something like that might be likely?
I mean, I wouldn't rule it out specifically, because if Sesko's wanting to leave, as per rumors that has been said, it was because that I would assume. Look, I hate that's that word again. I hate assuming, but it's because he wasn't a starter, so he would want to be a regular starter for RB Leipzig, and if he's not going to get that, then I think that's where he'll go. And if an option like that were to arise, I wouldn't put it past the clubs doing business. They've done business before, previously, as you mentioned, and have got a good rapport and relationship. And with Marco Rosa being our manager and actually, having very fond of Xavi Simons and being such a creative part, I wouldn't put it off them to do something permanent. However, it would have to be mutual agreement between all involved. And if that's the case, then yeah, it could be possible.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the best way. So every club, Leipzig and PSG, we all come out winners, and he's just such a great player. I love that comparison. And we signed, as you may know, Randall Colomwani, who had a very disappointing season at PSG. There's rumors he may be on the move, but PSG paid Frankfurt, I think, something like 90 million plus. So it's going to be hard to let him go at that kind of transfer figure, because you're going to take a loss. But also, is he part of the long-term project? I don't know. If right now, if you could say, hey, Colomani, go out, bring in Sesko, that would be incredible. But a lot to decide. I got another question here for you I wanted to ask. There's a lot of great talent in the Leipzig team. They're a great watch. There's so many great young players in the squad. Is there anyone that you think this summer is likely to be on the move, and maybe besides Xavi Simons and Sesko, that maybe PSG or other top clubs might be looking at? Who's sort of the undiscovered gem in the Leipzig squad?
I wouldn't say undiscovered gem, so to speak, for the player I'm going to mention. As I'm on to this, I'll try to think of an undiscovered gem. But it's well known that Dani Olmo wants to well, it's possible to leave the club. He wants to go back to Barcelona. There's that team again. But so he's on the move, quite possible. I think it was about 60 million euro for his release clause, and he wants to stay, but it really depends on what happens with all clubs and all parties involved. And then there's a couple of other players as well that we've just signed them, but I don't know what their future plans are for them. So Christoph Baumgartner and Nicholas Seiwald, both Austrians, came from Salzburg. And we've also got Elif Elmas, who really didn't get to play much this season. He played a total of 266 minutes and as about a 25 million euro signing from Napoli. He may be moving as well, and he's actually a really good player. He's just, in the last few games, he was able to bring out what he's shown at Napoli. It hasn't been picked, or I don't know why, if it's to do with not being up to the standards or anything like that. But, we went back earlier in the season and we had a Liverpool loanee. Apologies, I've forgotten his name. And he didn't play too well. I think it was like Fabio Carvalho or something like that. And I'm not too sure if the same boat's like that for Elif Elmas. If we don't get Xavi Simons as a loan back for next season, then Elif Elmas can play that other role with Dani Olmo. But yeah, there's a few players there that are quite easily able to go. Mohamed Simikin as well. He's a great defender. He's an attacking defender as well. Good passing. Very good on the wings, being able to go up and down on the fullback position. Apologies. And he's made it clear that he doesn't like being played in that position, even though he's quite good at it. And he may be leaving as well. So there's certainly players in the RB Leipzig squad that could possibly be on the move. And it'll be interesting to see how much business or lack of, depending on circumstances, RB Leipzig does next season. But there's a couple there that quite possibly, could be a diamond in the rough, so to speak. And going back onto that would have been the Nicholas Seiwald and Christoph Baumgartner and Elif Elmas.
Yeah, it's a great rundown. I did notice one player you didn't mention is Bichiabu, who was at PSG, came up through the academy, is at Leipzig. So, any thoughts on him? Did he get much playing time? What's your take on him right now?
He only played 34 minutes, so it was hard to judge his performances. It's very small, I know. He played a lot in the under-21s. And look, he's a very good central defender. He's someone for Leipzig's future. So Willy Orban is in his 30s. He's been around the club for a while. Leads from the front if and when he retires, hopefully at RB Leipzig. He can play in that exact role. And if we kept our defensive pair with Costello, the Caber, he could play alongside his fellow countrymen there. And I want to actually see more of him. I just don't think that we have the positioning in the squad to play him in his preferred role as a central centre-back. Otherwise, he'd have to play as a fullback of sorts. I see him being loaned out. I really want to see him develop and actually play in the first team in years to come.
Yeah, he's got all the physical tools you could ask for. He's still young at 19, but loads of potential there. So he's certainly a player to keep your eye on. We are recording this on Saturday, June 1st, just a few hours after the Champions League final between Dortmund and Real Madrid, and Madrid ended up winning that one. And I guess I'd be remiss if I got to ask you, since you're a fan of Leipzig, were you happy that Dortmund didn't win? I know they're kind of a competition there in Germany, or were you like most of us and we're just sick at seeing Madrid win again? What is your take on that real quick?
Look, we're the most hated club in Germany for many reasons. No, I didn't really mind if Dortmund won. I mean, I don't mind Real Madrid. They're a great team. There is a little bit, I wouldn't say salty, for lack of a better word, against Real Madrid in the round of 16. I feel that we played better across both legs in those games, and we were very unlucky to not go through. A lot of our players they had off games. Officiating wasn't the greatest, but you can't just always blame the officials regardless. There was a couple of incidences that happened, and look, Real Madrid are Real Madrid. Like, they're the best in Europe for a reason, and you got to back them in any final when it comes to European football, even domestically. So, no, there's no hate or anything like that for me against Borussia Dortmund. The only real team that I would say I dislike in the Bundesliga are Bayern, but that's because of how they do their business of the club and things like that. And plus, they've been successful for so long. So, if you're not the team that you support and there's another team successful in that league, you're always going to dislike them to a degree.
That's true. And it's always good to see Bayern Munich lose. I did enjoy them going trophyless this season. So
must be the Harry Kane effect.
yeah. Well, he was linked with PSG and then ended up going there, and it was nice to trophyless again. That was great. Justin, we're going to wrap up here. So we should hopefully have an answer regarding Xavi Simons before the Euros, which kick off, I believe, is it June 14th? So not too much longer to go here. He said he hopes to have this sorted, or I guess the report said he hopes to have this sorted out before that. We'll keep an eye on it. If something crazy happens with him, we'll have you back on. If there's more links to Sesko and things start heating up, we'll probably have you on. But I have a feeling we'll talk because maybe Leipzig and PSG will play next season. We just sort of seem to can't get away from each other, Leipzig and PSG. So I'm sure that we will talk soon. And if you listen to this, subscribe to the RBL Talk podcast. Justin's doing great work with that. We hope, like I said, to have you on again. And thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Ed. It's been a pleasure.